So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste from many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we find in the 61st chapter, obviously linked with chapter 1:8, regarding then the first section of the 61st chapter, where the spring feast then was completed, and then obviously regarding the second portion of the 61st chapter, the initial verses, then regarding the autumn feast yet coming. So then, in today's world, there is a lots of situations going on amongst the nations, and the Middle East is going through a very big turmoil, and as we can understand, it's going to be then the very section of this world we should spend time with when we read then the holy instructions then designated and recorded by Daniel the prophet. So it was then promised before an absolute proof of the prophecy of Daniel regarding then the kingdom of the north, as we understand as the Soviet Union. So let's then understand a point. When we read, for instance, the 7th verse of the 11th chapter, let's understand then what it means as far as the Gentile netzer. Netzer is a very special word used in the Hebrew language, and then we should understand that is related with the Messiah, the Savior. It came from the lineage of David and previously from the lineage of Yitzhak. However, when this holy word is used with the Gentile events, then we understand it's related with a system. Then explains the system of the Soviet Union, then later would return and must be greater than the former. As it is, you can read verse 1:4. But then let's try to understand another section. What makes then Egypt strong? From the Hebrew language we read, for instance, the 8th verse, and explains then in the molten images, explaining then the important vases and those belongings of the Egyptians, and the silver and the gold went into exile. It does not mean that those items went into exile. Those holy words in Hebrew relates with placing the situation aside for some time. This is what it means, because the translator of English did not understand the Holy Hebrew, obviously. So then, as we understand it, then it's obviously explaining the situation of these items then placed aside for a time. Then we read in the 8th chapter, then they went to exile for a time, and then brought to Egypt, and he, the northern kingdom. Let's try to understand. He, then, northern kingdom, because we are going towards the northern kingdom, explaining of Egypt, then he shall stand from the kingdom of the north. So then, this he, when relates with the northern kingdom, is directly related with Egypt. So what's going to make Egypt strong and then becoming where they used to be trade-wise is the northern kingdom. This section is very simple. You can read it again. And then those items, the molten images and so on and so forth, we can read very precisely. Silver and gold went into exile and went to Egypt. And exile into Egypt went aside for some time. Then he, in coming, shall then come from the kingdom of the north. So what Egypt shall be must come from the kingdom of the north. And the evidence is very clear. Let's then understand what's going on then with China. China is the sole country with more than 57% of the world's trade by itself. China is very big. China has deals with Africa, in Sudan for instance, extremely important, because from Sudan comes tabernacling, as per the instructions of Yeshayahu the prophet. So what we should understand then as far as Sudan, China has interests in Sudan, also in many places of Congo. Since we understand China holds 50% plus of the world's trade by itself, Congo then is the utmost importance for China regarding then rare materials. So then the Soviets, very smartly, they're going to work their way through Egypt down northern Africa. So then it gives time for Sudan to prepare itself for the first holy city of the restoration period. From then on, the same time then tabernacling is secured, and then China has its interests then secured, and then going down until reaches Congo, where then the Soviets will to have many skirmishes. However, obviously the Northern Kingdom will to come out victorious. So then, as we understand this portion, let's be extremely simple. The deal is having the Soviet Union arming then Egypt with as many weapons as they can. Egypt must become nearly independent as far as arms are concerned. From then on, the situation then is going to take on by itself. We should be very cautious what kind of exercise they should be doing with those weapons regarding influence from outside of Egypt. But as far as defending themselves, they should receive as many arms as they can from the Northern Kingdom. As we read, once again, the 8th verse, and also their gods with the molten images and those vases and what they used to have, their belongings with the silver and gold went into exile for a time. Then Egypt, explaining of Egypt, he then shall stand from the kingdom of the north. From the kingdom of the north. It's explaining from where the power is coming from. Coming from the kingdom of the north. So it's explained very, very simple. When we read from the Holy Hebrew, we must understand not only the translation of those holy words of Hebrew, but then the content and the context of the whole situation. If you go only by wordings, then you can get mixed up. But what is the objective? What is, in quote, the big picture of the situation? China must make a deal with Africa. China is becoming then obviously online. China has taken the New York Exchange. They are the first. They are the most powerful e-trade company of this planet. Thus the Chinese system has come, as it was then said many times before, where then 80% of the United States did not even heard of Alibaba. Now they have become the very top of the entire nation, as many didn't believe the Chinese would come, and it did. As far as we can understand from this content and context of Sudan, Northern Africa, and Egypt, and then down beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, explaining of Congo, and the riches of Congo, they must be secured for the purposes of China, but not only China, but mostly China. And then we understand the Northern Kingdom working through some of these skirmishes, so then China secures its materials for further use. As far as United States, let's evaluate these very simply. Firstly, they have no okay from the United Nations as far as invading Syria. They are doing things on their own as they did before. Did it work before? It did not. Is it going to work again? No. It's very obvious. So then, as far as they are in this wave of positive thinking on their side, if they had taken the world by its tail, let's remind ourselves that this truly is the last push forward of the United States regarding the Middle East. This truly is the very last. They won't do this anymore. Because as we can understand and analyze the Holy Instructions, there is no more time left for the United States to go around and trying to control other nations, trying to dictate who should be in power, who should not. Then they invade these nations, they go to the other nation, they don't ask for approval, they don't ask for authorization. They go ahead and do whatever they want. This truly is the last time. So then, because of this, then the prophecies of Daniel is the utmost importance as we read then beyond, where then the covenants then are active. After the Soviet Union then makes a deal with Egypt in providing them as many arms as required, then Egypt must do its own share of the responsibility of the area. Obviously, it's going to influence Northern Africa, extremely important, and then Sudan, where China has many interests regarding oil. And then at the same time, we understand tabernacling is then once again activated. From then on, then the skirmishes of then Africa and those countries of Africa with the Northern Kingdom, simply for the securing of a place of a China, securing of this place of Congo for China. As China then do its linking with other nations, then you will understand later on the sequence of events. As then tabernacling is established, then the US obviously is going to be joined with Israel once again. As the Soviet Union becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and China becomes more and more prominent, as they are already prominent, because of the Chinese system already has then won the entire country of the United States. They are the top. Then the United States is going to verify their time is then expired. Nations are going to try once again, thinking themselves what they should do with their own nations, and they are going to evaluate what these nations can invest on the United States. There is nothing to invest on. The United States only expenses, and they only spend, and they spend what they don't have. So there is no reason for the United States then to be leading the world. China should lead the world, and this system must become worldwide. As they realize there is nothing to invest in the United States, and no longer they can become the only judges and executioners at the same time, then they're going to realize there is not much to invest in themselves. The nation is bankrupt, and their nations are going to start understanding that China and the system of China and the monetary system of China should be adopted via computer, and then nations are going to start rejecting the United States. Where do we find precisely then the verse regarding this? Very simply, you find in the 21st verse of the 11th chapter. Why you would make a jump then from the 8th and then to 21? Because from this section of the 8th verse, 8th and 9th, explaining then obviously Northern Africa and then Sudan, there is a section of it related with tabernacling. But then comes the first covenant, where then Israel had the first tabernacle service, and then there is the second tabernacle services where the vision then is established. Then on Northern Sudan, that's where tabernacle is going to be at, on the land of Cush, as precisely as Prophet Yeshayahu prophesied. And then the US is going to realize there is not much in their country to invest on. And then nations are going to start buying from China more and more and more. They're going to start be linking themselves with China, buying their own monetary system, storing them in their computers, investing in China, and they're going to realize US then is a foreigner in their land. And then, out of despair, US is going to join with Israel once again, thus becoming a stronger relationship with Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog of our time. And then, because of deceit, then there are some skirmishes of the false prophet, or then the leader of the false covenant, or the abomination that makes desolate, the desire of the non-believing Israel of having the third temple, versus then the deceit of the United States of believing in this false savior of their own making. And they will to deceive many because of it. So then you read the relationship of these couple of covenants. In reality, there is only a covenant. The first was completed, the second was a continuation of the first. However, because of the unbelieving Israel and the false prophet of the United States, they're going to be joined once again and trying to come up with themselves as then the leader of a covenant. Starts a brand new section of religious activity in the world. As we understand, the Islamic people, they won't let the US have their way, mostly because there is nothing to invest in the US. Absolutely nothing. They have no industry enough. They have no oil enough for themselves. They don't have economy enough. So then they are going to realize they are doing and making trouble in the world. At some point, the nations are going to become tired of the US, and they're simply going to say to themselves, let's then make sure US understands they have 48 hours to come out of our country and bring their ships, their aircrafts, and then return to their own land. Thus becoming the despised one, found in the 21st verse of the 11th chapter. This is what is coming. As we can understand from ever since the 7th verse, where then the Gentile Netzer, or then the system of the Soviet Union, becoming then greater than the former. Then you find in the 8th chapter then the Northern Kingdom making a deal with Egypt regarding arms and providing them whatsoever is required to make sure Egypt becomes independent in their area to make decisions. Thus Northern Africa then obviously is organized, and then China is sending soldiers to Sudan. And then securing Sudan comes tabernacling. From then on, US then is already nearly furious because the world is linking with China and the USD is being replaced by the Chinese yen, and then they're going to realize themselves they have no industry. There is nothing to invest on. And nations are going to start rejecting them until we come to the 21st verse, the despised one. Prior of these, then, the skirmishes of both covenants. There is a section of it that explains then the violent ones. Because then we understand as Sudan then is secured for tabernacling, then later on, shortly after, they understand they have the wrong Messiah. They have the wrong Savior. Then they're going to try to link up with Israel once again. So then, these we should read and make notations of these, making notes. But we truly understand 100% the importance of the Soviet Union making a deal with Egypt. There is no way around it. In terms of the Northern Kingdom, if they want to have a proper balance of decisions and power, related with the United Nations and the nations making decisions and no other nation being invaded by others, we must make a deal with Egypt. Then the situation will become clearer. So next time we're going to evaluate more this topic, because the covenant must be explained yet, because there is a third understanding of the situation. We have then the true covenant, the vision must be established, the second tabernacle services being then reactivated on the land of Cush. There is the previous covenant of Moses, where the unbelieving Israel is going to try to re-establish the Levitical sacrifices, thus becoming the abomination that makes desolate. And then the false prophet, the United States, and its belief in their own Savior, their own made-up Savior, and their own system of beliefs. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.